What's up, everyone? Collector's Cash episode 2. We're back. I'm your host, Matt DiTullio, and for today's episode, I wanted to focus on something that I get asked a lot, which is, what's it like to be an art rep? What are your responsibilities? How did you get started? And I wanted to bring on, not just have my perspective, but bring on some close friends of mine from all around the world that I've either had amazing dealings with, learned things from, had phenomenal experiences with as a collector, and just generally enjoyed my experiences working with them as a collector or as an art rep in collaboration. So I wanted to bring on 3 people from all different portions of the world that have different sizes, different scopes of rosters, and different approaches to being an art rep. So first off, I want to start in the UK with someone who I've had amazing experiences with, been an absolute close friend throughout the years, the ever elegant Tamsin Isles. Tamsin, how are you doing?
Hi, Matt. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for hopping on. I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure.
So doing a little bit of a research kind of video here to talk about art reps around the world. So I wanted to have some of my personal favorite art reps and, artist representatives that rep some phenomenal artists that I've worked with throughout the years. So naturally came right to you. So I wanted to kind of first start off with, tell me a little bit about, name of your business, the artists you represent, the countries that they're from, because my big thing that I wanted to do with this episode of the show was to kind of shed some light on being behind the table, like what art reps do, what they do for individual artists that maybe some don't require or some do, but just to give a bigger picture of, kind of what the art rep does in this industry.
Yeah. Well, I operate just predominantly under my own name, largely because, not because I'm a horrible narcissist, but because quite a few people already knew me and knew what I did through my work with Addy. So that's why I do that. And I first started out actually working with Addy. I was kind of just helping him out because I was training to be a makeup artist and I was working as a makeup artist. And I just realized partway through while I was doing all this stuff with Addy that working with Addy was actually basically a much more sensible career opportunity than, because, if you know anything about makeup, then it's really, you have to really grind to get to get the jobs. Absolutely. And everything. It's pretty intense. So I started helping him, and then we ended up sort of starting a business together whereby I would do more of the promotional side, the social media, the talking to clients and customers, and then selling art. And I've been doing that now since, probably like mid to late 2000s, I would say. And it just meant that sort of from there, I reached a point a few years ago where I was like, well, I'm doing this for Addy and I'm really enjoying it. But I started speaking to a few people who were looking for an art rep, but wanted something that was maybe a little bit different. And one of the big things that I came across with a lot of artists was that they wanted someone to work with who wasn't going to restrict them hugely, because obviously I think, and I totally understand why, but I think a lot of people have them sort of sign exclusivity agreements and, you can't sign books for this person, or you can't sell your own art. It all has to go through me.
Can't do this show. You have to travel here once a year.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I've always tried to because I think I've come from it from an approach of the other side, seeing how it works with Addy. And for anyone, by the way, who doesn't know me, Addy Granov is my husband, which is why we've been working together, obviously, for so long. And basically, it was about offering artists that degree of flexibility. So people who traditionally didn't want to have art reps, or just felt like it would limit them a bit, I actually said, actually, it's fine. I'm really happy to work with you and give you basically what you need. So you tell me, and if you want me to arrange shows, I can do that. If you want me to sell art, I can do that. If you want me to advertise things, if you want me to put you in contact with companies, because, I might have connections and things, all that is the kind of stuff that I can do. But everybody wants something different, so it's about not being too prescriptive and just offering what you have, and then people can kind of pick and choose what suits them.
Right. And I think it's, you and I have something similar in that approach where it's more tailored by the artist than a general umbrella of, what you do, because,
Absolutely.
each artist has individual things that they want you to do. Some, love to book their own flights and love to, make sure that they're on the aisle or the window or whatever it is. Or like, no, just get me there. You book the flights, you do this. So I think it's, instead of having that umbrella approach where everything's the same for each artist all the way through, really being able to tailor the experience to give them what they want gives them the ability to really focus on creating the best art that they can, for us to sell.
I think also that's the benefit. I mean, you and I have spoken about this before, but we quite like having a sort of a small stable of artists as well, because I think then it's kind of easier to sort of, because when you're dealing with a lot of people, I think it's a lot harder to do that. It can be done. And obviously there are a few art reps who, massive credit to them, who manage that and do a fantastic job. But I think for me, knowing my kind of limitations, I'm happier working with a smaller set of people and also they're all people that I know quite well too. They're all long-term friends. Every single artist that I'm working with, we've known for, I would say, at least 15 years. So it means that I already have an awareness of some of their likes and dislikes. And, I try to be respectful of what they want as well. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And obviously, like you said, more power to you if you can have 25, 30 artists. I think, for me, and as you said, we've spoken about it. It's like, when I bring on an artist, I really try to have one full year with them to just understand what they expect of me, get them to understand what I expect of them, understand their techniques, their tools, their speed. Are they, do they like opening commissions? Do they not like opening commissions? Do they want to work on bigger things, smaller things? And, for me, especially with, the climbing price of original art compared to what it was 25 years ago, when a client comes up to me and says, well, what's the price of this? And I say, oh, it's $5,000. And like, why is it so expensive? I want to be able to give them, a really credible answer as to why. Well, it took them this many hours. These were the techniques. This is how, this is when it was done. This was the thought process through it. And I feel like that kind of connects the client to the piece a little bit more. And, more power to if you have those artists. But for me, you said a very powerful, I know my own limitations. So, if you have 15 guys, you can kind of, and you don't have a team, of course, you don't hire 10, 12 people to work for you. You can't just, it's hard to give that personal experience. And for me, coming from the other side, which, me buying from you throughout the years and getting pieces from Addie, it's like, that was my personal favorite thing about getting a piece was like connecting with the artist, understanding how it was made, hearing a little bit more about it than, just picking it up. And of course, I've had the commission experiences where I've just picked them up and they've been great, but really having a chat and understanding a little bit more always kind of, made it a little bit more special for me. So I always try to, pass that on to the client if they're interested, and seem to be, working up to this point. So you also said with the artists you work with. So who are the artists that you're working with currently other than Addie?
So it's Liba Mayo, Jeff Darrow, Didier, Chris Beals, but his pen name, his artist name is Chris. And I just started working as well with Esad Ribic too. So it's a really nice combination of different styles, different approaches, but almost by accident. This definitely wasn't a deliberate thing, but all of the artists that I work with are based in Europe.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that because I wasn't sure if that was like the master plan or the dominoes just happened to fall.
It was just a happy accident, really, whereby, the people that I kind of got in touch with who said, yes, I'd like to work with you, or the people who got in touch with me to ask if I'd do stuff with them, all ended up being people based in Europe, which it's quite handy because it means I can pretty easily, because I'm based in the UK, so I can pretty easily hop on a flight if I need to go and pick up some art or something like that. So I've done that done that before. But yeah, it's really nice. And I mean, I'm not saying I'd rule out having people from other parts of the world.
Right.
I'm very happy to do that too. It's kind of the way it's developed so far. So yeah.
Yeah, and you spoke about Assad, so I'm very thankful to be working with you, representing Assad.
Same here.
United States and Canada, South America, that type of deal. You're handling all Europe, and you have everybody from Europe, so you have the European crew. But for me, when I first launched Assad, the main question that I got was like, well, is he changing his name to Simone? So the same thing. It didn't happen that way, and it just happened to work out. But I'm super thankful to be working with Assad, but also to be working with you because, we have a lot of the same philosophies and, the same deliverance of what we want to give to the client. And, I think what you've done with Addie's work, obviously, I say this all the time, the artist's work speaks for itself. You know what I mean? We have a job to sell it for sure. But I think, the way I've seen you curate Addie's work and, having those commissions that he does on the higher levels, then, the headshots at the shows and things like that, having the different varieties been really great. So I also think it's tailoring what type of commissions or what type of work. I love Chris's work because I saw one of recently something that was on your website. It was like a Western style, like horizontal piece.
Yeah.
Really, really cool stuff. So
he's so good. Yeah, I absolutely.
You have some great variety. You have painter, you have illustrator, and then somebody like Lee. I don't know how
he's amazing. He's really amazing.
How much detail he packs into like one panel, let alone a cover. How is it working with Lee? Because I've got to assume he's got to be a little bit on the. Maybe I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Is he a little bit on the slower side because of the amount of detail he's putting into each one of those things?
Surprisingly, I wouldn't say so. He puts in a colossal amount of detail, but like a lot of these guys, I think he's driven and I think he's very focused. And so I wouldn't say that he was, especially for the level of detail, I wouldn't describe it as slow. I'm often quite surprised at how quickly he does it. And I suppose it'll depend on the piece, and some pieces speak to you more and others feel more of a grind to get through and all of that sort of thing. But overall, I would say actually he's remarkably quick considering.
It's incredible because, when you see his work, the one thing I always say, if you look at Lee's work, look at the gloves and the boots.
Oh, yeah.
They're incredible because, a lot of people will shy away from things like that. They make sure that they're out of the panel or out of the cover. And
he's like a master of texture, the different fabrics and it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Drapery, clothing. He doesn't shy away, and it always has, such a realistic feel to it. Like his boots, I feel like I can put them on.
But still very much Lee's style, which
Correct.
I love. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I always say, when you get to a certain point, the coolest thing for me about, an artist is when I walk into a comic shop and I can see on the rack from 20 feet away, like, oh, that's a Granoff or that's a Bermejo, because their style has elevated to the point where you can, notice it really, almost immediately. And Lee's work, like a couple of his Joker covers, Batman covers, they were just so stunning. It was crazy.
I would say very much it's the same for the two Simones as well. Yeah. That because whenever I see their stuff, it's very much like, oh yeah, I immediately have that recognition, and I think that's the magic of it. When you get someone who is so good and they really do have a vision basically, and that's what you're seeing when you're seeing their work.
And you have thank you very much. And you have the kind of the cool background to be, married to Addie and see the process from start to finish. And I tell people all the time, the luckiest part of my job is that, like, watching something from a complete white sheet of Arches paper or canvas or masonite board and it turning into, a complete piece of original art. And, I was just it was my first experience with Assad, at La Mole in Mexico City. Oh, yeah. And I had no idea how fast he paints. It's like
bonkers, isn't it? Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It doesn't make any sense. It's actually crazy. And when I started talking to him about it, he was, you could just tell that he was a true master of understanding where the light comes from and getting your eye to see what he wants you to see. And it was such a unique experience. And
it's amazing how he does that.
Too many questions, but I had to
no,
keep asking.
It's amazing because he almost works in a different way, because a lot of people will begin with the line, whereas Esad blocks in color.
Yep.
And then brings the detail into it as the painting develops.
Correct.
Whereas, a lot of people who are working traditionally in comics or in illustration, they will do a drawing, first, and then kind of like almost like color in the drawing.
Yep.
With Esad, it really is that amazing, that like blocking in of the color that then, develops, and his knowledge of color and his choice with colors. I think he's always just really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, he would do like when you would say a pencil. I mean, the pencil sketch was like a loose, like figure, the loosest figure I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden, when he would start painting, the figure just became more and more detailed as the painting went on. And then he knew exactly where to leave things, to not do too much, and then to put hyper detail over here to make it transition over. I mean, it was an incredible experience. But I've watched Bianchi painting acrylics for years, and then I got to watch Esad with the watercolors and the gouache, and just understanding that there's so many different techniques, so many different pathways to make extremely, beautiful art. It's really cool to experience it and watch it be created.
No, Adi and I were having a discussion because he went last week to an art gallery in France, in Paris. He went to the Musée d'Orsay and had almost like a bit of a spiritual experience going around it and seeing a lot of the art. And we were discussing Esad's work afterwards, because we were talking about people who work today who really do sort of, really, really beautiful stuff. And he was saying that actually apparently because Esad started out working at an animation studio many years ago. And for a lot of animators, they tend to use gouache, or they used to traditionally. Obviously, so much of it is computer-based now. But they would hand paint things, and gouache was a very, very quick way of painting.
Yeah.
So, it was easy to put down and it dried quickly. So he really did practice and train with gouache. So he now has this remarkable ability to paint it, so quickly, but yet with adding exactly where the detail needs to be to give you the focal point, and where, like you said, it needs to be less detailed so that it blends into the background and all of that. And so I think that's where a lot of his, obviously he trained at art school as well, but I think a lot of his sort of on-the-job experience came from doing that.
Exactly. The background in animation is really important. And that's what I was talking to him about, because he says you really get a feel of how to flow things. And then, that's on a bigger scale. But when you're working on it on a single piece scale, you can really bring it down to a smaller size and still have a flow of an animation style inside of a single piece. And he's really mastered that. I mean, just
definitely.
Beautiful stuff. Yeah,
no, definitely. And when I look at someone like, like Didier's work, who I represent, I mean, he has it's sort of an inspired by animation style, because he, obviously grew up on a lot of the, French, Belgian, Italian sort of masters in comics and graphic novels, but he was also a really big Disney fan too. And I think that's really translated so well into his style, because he just has such a beautiful, beautiful line. And he's doing a book at the moment that I'm very, very excited about, that's about cats. But he's doing, it's unbelievable. I mean, the level of, so it's all fully painted in watercolor.
Wow.
Every single page is like a real, like vibrant kind of feast for the eyes. And he's done many different sort of breeds of cats and different types of cats. So it really brings in you can really tell the personality in all of them.
Yes.
So I'm very, very excited about when he's done with that, and when we can finally share some of it, because it's really quite special, I think.
That's great news. Yeah, I think that's it's going to be something I'm looking forward to seeing, and I know that maybe an original or two may end up with you, just for your cat.
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%. 100%. Some
well.
of them are just so beautiful. I saw a few in person when I went to visit him last year, and you know how it is when you especially with traditional art, you can see a scan and you can think, wow, that piece looks great. But it's never until you actually get it in person that suddenly you see the textures and the colors all make sense. And, there's just something totally different. And I think that's a big part of the reason, probably, for both of us, because we both, love art, and, you've been a collector for a long time. And I kind of sort of almost like fell into it, and just, we really love having like pieces by people whose work we admire and everything. And so, yeah, I'm a big advocate of see it in person, because I think it'll always help you make the decision.
I was just about to say, I mean, scans are great, photographs are beautiful, but when you hold it in your hand or you see it, even I always say sometimes if a client's in front of me and they're flipping through the portfolio, I'm like, take it out of the portfolio. Like, just take it out. Get a good
Plastic
look at
film
it.
Does it no favors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I know you also said in the beginning, so you started working with Addie in around 2000. Did you have what was kind of the journey, and then what was maybe like the moment you were like, where you were kind of doing makeup and then you decided, hey, I'm going to kind of go into this comic art industry? Did you have other stops before you became an art rep? And then kind of what was the moment where you were like, I think I want to do this?
No, it was literally just, I was kind of doing it anyway, because Addie needed help with a few bits and pieces with, shipping and also customer facing stuff, because I did a lot of, and I think maybe you have a bit of that background too, and it's probably why we like it, but I had quite a lot of customer facing experience. And I actually have always really enjoyed the customer service side, because as well as like tailoring my approach to the artist, I also kind of like to tailor my approach to the buyer as well, because how sometimes you walk into a shop and you're minding your own business and someone's coming up and they're bugging you. And you're like, look,
attacking you to buy something.
And you're like, look, I know what I'm looking for. I don't need help, but thank you very much. And they kind of keep going. But then there are some people who come into a shop and they really like someone to hold their hand all the way through it. And I realized that actually that's a big part of what I do, because some people, they need more input. They like to chat with someone. They like more of a, they like someone to kind of be there to help them through the process. And then I have other people who literally get in touch and they go, I want to buy this. And I go, great. And they pay. And then I ship it to them and they just say, thank you very much. And that's the end, but the thing is, either one works for me, because,
Absolutely.
They're both just part of, what I do. And I think that's probably why you and I have quite similar approaches, I think, to things, because we kind of have that background of working with different people and, just knowing how to kind of be flexible yourself in order to work with people.
It's a great line, flexible. My father taught me a famous saying, in those commercials where you're like, as you get older, you turn into your father. They're definitely happening with me. They're very accurate. And, one thing he always told me was, you have to be a chameleon. You can't have the same selling approach to every single customer. You have to be able to discern what's important to them, and then, shape yourself, tailor it around to talk to them. And as you said, I think sometimes maybe clients think all clients are the same, or that they're, that everybody buys the same. I know I have some clients that they don't want to take the piece in person at the show. They want to pick it up after the event because they don't like people knowing that they're picking pieces up, or they want to be a private collector.
Yep.
I have some people, like you said, that are like, hey, what's the price on this? I tell them the price. Great, I'll buy it. They send me the wire or the PayPal. Then I have some people who really want to, deep dive into what are the techniques? How did they get this effect? I have some people, is it for a variant cover? Is it a cover A? Is it this? So everybody has their own version of collecting. And I think that's one of the reasons why I just fell in love with this hobby, was because there's so many different ways to curate your own collection. And I felt like that if I could, there's a lot of phenomenal artists out there, a lot of great artist repping companies. And I felt like if I could make clients feel special when they came to me and feel like they got exactly what they were looking for, not only in the piece of art that they were looking for, but the experience they got buying it. That was really my goal when I started, because sometimes I had missed that experience and I felt, some things were kind of flat in the past. And I was like, well, if I can maybe tailor this to be something really memorable and really exciting for each client in their own way, in their own right, that's kind of my goal. So that was really my decision when I first started, what's the foundation of DiTullio Art Collective? And my thing was going to be, artist first, client second, me last. And if the other First two things, the
That's
first
how
two
it
things are
goes.
taken care of. You know, if the artist is happy and the client's happy, the third thing, it takes care of
It
itself.
just kind of follows. It's like a natural kind of progression. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's always been that's the way I look at it too, because, you know, you kind of have to, you're there to facilitate. That's literally your main job. You know, so you kind of have to make it work for everyone else. And then hopefully as that builds, you know, it follows through that, then, you know, you're okay too.
Yep, exactly. And when you were kind of coming through, I believe, didn't you work in the convention circuit as far as on the back end at one point to?
Yeah, I did. Like late 2000s, I helped out with Thought Bubble in Leeds and just spent a couple of years helping them the first 2 years, basically, I worked on that show and helped them set it up. And the first year was very small and like quite, you know, easy to do. But then the second year we like decided it was like go big or go home kind of thing. So we really did like up the ante and booked a much, much bigger space, you know, so instead of it being like 400 people, it was more like 2,000 people, which probably doesn't sound like that big a jump, but it really was for us. Yeah, it was a really big jump, you know, and suddenly, you know, we were dealing with all kinds of different aspects of it. And so, yeah, I had that element. And again, because Addie and I had been going to quite a few sort of smaller shows around that time, we had a bit of an awareness of what artists kind of needed. And a lot of the feedback that I got on that show, especially like the second year, because I was really insistent that if we were inviting people as guests, then we should treat them as guests. So we should look after them properly, because at the time, the norm in UK conventions was to expect artists to turn up on their own dime, pay for their own hotel, pay for their own travel. And I remember thinking that to me, that doesn't seem like much of an invitation. If you're like, basically, will you come work for free, promote my show for free, you know? So I was very, very strict on saying like, no, anybody who's invited, you know, they get, you know, a decent hotel room, they get their travel costs covered. And, you know, at the very least, we can buy them a drink or get them a meal or something like that, just because that was a big part of it, you know, because if you make the guests feel welcome and appreciated, then I think that also translates too. You know, so yeah, that was part of it. And I think everything that I've done really, and I would imagine it'll be very similar for you. A lot of it is just based on experience. You know, you know, everything that you work on kind of, you know, builds a bigger picture of,
absolutely,
you know, what you like, what you don't like, what people seem to respond to well, and also what creates like goodwill and everything. So yeah, I think that was, you know, obviously another thing that was kind of just part of building the picture for me.
Yeah, I was going to say it gave you, you know, maybe a wider scope of the industry and, you know, being able to understand it. I think you said something super powerful, and I think we're getting back on the other side of it. It got really reversed for a while with the artists and the guests and how they were treated. And like, I always try to, you know, keep in mind in my head, I'm like, well, if the artist lineup isn't there, the fans don't come.
No,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it got really, you know, reversed for a little bit. And I'm super happy to see, and, you know, on my end, I have no problem saying it, is like, I love when to see an artist gets their worth, because I think something that gets lost in this whole thing is that, you know, artists aren't machines, and we love what they create. And sometimes they have to be in a proper environment to create. You can ask any artist, literally probably 99 out of 100 would prefer to do their work in their own studio rather than a convention with people screaming and yelling and, you know, stopping for signatures. And, you know, these artists that are coming to these events and creating for us, you know, for our consumption, it's, we have to understand that they have to be in a good headspace to create these pieces and to give these clients and our, you know, our customers and the customers of events, you know, what they're looking for. Yeah,
it's very true. Very true.
And then now let me ask you this, speaking of, you know, working at the studio. So when Addie opens up the commission list, do you ever like peek around the corner and you're like, hey, Addie, how are we doing on these commissions? Or self-sufficient?
Oh yeah. That's always you know, it's kind of like, I try not to be a nag, but it is kind of like, okay, so there is this and this, you know. To be fair, he is actually really good. He's a very, very conscientious worker. He hates making people wait, and, you know, he hates the idea that he's like backlogged. So that's one of the reasons that we tend not to open the list very often. It's because he likes to make sure that he either definitely has time to do them, or if for some reason something happens and he has to do it like afterwards or something, then, we're at least not making someone wait way too long. But yeah, we usually have one or two, because sometimes he'll agree to do something for a friend. Then we'll, end up kind of like waiting a little while for him to have a bit more spare time to do it. But yeah, at the moment, I think he's pretty up to speed. So that's good.
I mean, I've never waited for one, so he's 100% with me. You know what I mean?
Good. Okay, yeah. But it's just it's every now and again. He's pretty good, and like I say, it's largely due to the fact that he hates having to make people wait. So.
And same thing, I'll give you an example, like with Bianchi, I'll fly to Italy, I go to Tuscany, I'm in the studio in Lucca, and I come in and I'm like, oh, like these 3 things aren't done. He's like, Maddie, don't worry about it. I've been doing this for 30 years. I got it under control. I'm like, okay, no problem.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's never not delivered. And it goes back to, like I said, they're not machines, but they are professionals. Yeah. And it's really incredible when they sit down and are under a deadline, or, like DeMio, for example, too, something will be 3 days before the deadline. And he's like, oh yeah, it's no problem. I'm like, I'll get it done. I'm like, okay. And I don't ask any more questions anymore because he always gets it done. And it's, it's incredible when they really sit down and just are in their zone, their mode, and just can create nonstop. Because I've taken art classes. I've, tried painting classes. I've done illustration classes. I just don't have it. Just don't have it. I'm probably, overthinking it or doing whatever. But, when you get to watch something like that, be created or ramped up and, finished in, almost, a savant amount of time to something that would take a regular person months and months, and it's like a couple days to get done. It really is a pleasure to watch. And I think that's what makes the original art, so enticing. Is it's somebody's hours, it's somebody's life, it's somebody's time that they're putting into this. And it's incredible to be able to hold a piece of it and own it, or have it on your wall, or even just admire it. I mean, lately when I've been going to conventions, I love just going and flipping through portfolios, different techniques, different styles, different things. I mean, there's so much great art out there,
Yeah, I really enjoyed that actually, because I took myself to OAX back in January, and really, really enjoyed actually the variety and seeing all the different types of art, and everything from sort of oil painters to pencilers to inkers, a real sort of variety of different styles, different techniques, I found that really, really quite fun and quite fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, OAX is something special. I feel like you never see that many. Like you said, the variety of artists, from card art to poster art to, fantasy art to, there's something for everybody there. And, I always like learning. I like learning something new, or, different version of collecting. I had, one guy once, and it was my version of my art rep story of, never judging a book by its cover. I had a guy reach out to me and say, I'd like a Bianchi commission of, just an arm. Like a hand. I'm like,
oh, I think I know that guy.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I think he's got a piece from Addy before. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I want here up and some claws. I'm like,
I think Addy did like a Thanos glove or an Iron Man glove.
Yeah. He's like, oh, it turned out guy's like a hand surgeon, and he has them all throughout his office from his, favorite artist. I'm like, amazing. If, that's what you do, that's how you collect. So now I don't ask any questions. I just ask the artist if they want to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much it.
Same. All you can do is forward the request. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, as you have, I've had some weird ones. I've had some very bizarre ones. I'm like,
we've definitely had one or two. To be fair, not as many as we used to get. Like when Addy was first doing drawings years and years ago, we would get some really, really weird ones. But I think once people start paying more for art, then I think they're more serious about what they ask for.
Right. Agreed. And every once in a while I get one request that I just don't even forward because like, I'm just like, I know the answer to that's going to be no. And, it's like, I wonder what the other part of this guy's collection looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah. We've had one or two of those as well.
So, Tamsin, I just wanted to say, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And like I said at the beginning, my goal was to kind of just have, different art reps on that have, different styles, different views throughout the world. And I've always, had great experience, working with you and working with Addie. And, I've done a lot of the things that I do now based off of some experiences I've had with you. So I wanted to give you, a thank you on that. And, also I kind of wanted to ask, do you have, do you have any future plans? Are you, is the door open for more artists? Or is it kind of, it is where it is for now? What's the future?
Maybe it's like, bad of me to want this, but I'd really, really love to represent a woman. So, I'm always kind of on the lookout for someone who, I think I can do a good job for this person, but also I think it would be actually really quite nice just because when I started reading comics and collecting comics, like in the 90s, at the time, there were a handful of women working in comics, but a lot of them were in, the ones that were probably more in editorial roles.
Right.
There weren't many artists at the time, like literally you could count on one hand. And I think now there are so many more, and it makes me so happy to see just, how many women are producing like really, really astonishing work. So I think for me, that would be quite exciting. But it has to be someone, it has to be a good fit, and it has to be someone who I think like I can really like work well for this person. And obviously they have to want to work with me too, so if it happens, then it'll happen, naturally, because all the other guys who've ended up coming on, it's been a very natural kind of like thing and progression. And, and I never like to kind of like force anything. And it's more just about like, we'll see how it goes. But otherwise, it's just doing more shows. I'd love to get Didier out to an American show. That would be, I think, really, really great. Just kind of continuing on, like, more work, more non-comic stuff as well. Because the stuff I put up for Essad recently was his really beautiful Louis Vuitton stuff.
Yeah, and I thought, I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing I've really liked about, working with you and then, visiting your site as well is like, I'm very thankful. And I think sometimes we maybe take it for granted that the artists that we love are choosing to do comic book art, because they could do fine art. They could do, different types of paintings. And, the Louis Vuitton travel book by Essad was something extremely cool for me. And, I spoke to him about it when we were in Mexico, and, he goes to Hawaii and he makes this travel book and he's doing all these these photographs, these studies, all these things. And then when you look at Assad's work for the Louis Vuitton travel book, it's a completely different perspective. And some of the shots of the boats, the water, the housing, the architecture, I mean, it's fine art to me, and it's beautiful. So you've kind of always, in my opinion, aired on that, well, I do comic book art, but I have a fine art feel to it. And then when you launched Assad and you had the Louis Vuitton travel book, I felt like, the original art, I felt like that was right in your wheelhouse, because the art's just, it's very unique, and maybe it's not for the average, Iron Man or Spider-Man collector, but it's stunning art. I mean, it's from start to finish, just beautiful, beautiful art.
What's really fascinating about the Louis Vuitton stuff is that it's been purchased by a lot of artists. So
Simone DeMille bought one.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So like my biggest like base for those is it has been artists. I've had a couple of people who are, traditional collectors, and often people who are comic book fans, but then also Louis Vuitton fans and then Essad fans. So it's like a perfect mix. But editors and artists have been like the ones who've bought the stuff. So I think that's really cool.
It is. It's always cool when you sell a piece of art from one of your artists to another artist, because that means it spoke to them in a way that it just resonated with them. You know, when somebody can create like that and then they want to buy a piece of art from one of your artists, it's something pretty special. So I've only had a few of them, but I've always enjoyed those moments.
Yeah, same.
And I wish you the best in the future. I'm sure you're going to keep growing at the exact rate you would like to. And I look forward to seeing you at shows. It's always great seeing you and catching up. So I wanted to thank you for your time for coming on. And you have anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. So I really appreciate it.
I do have one more question I forgot to ask.
Okay.
Whose is that above you? Is that Addie's or is that yours? Because that's beautiful.
Oh, it's one of our very early purchases. We were at a show in Chicago back in about 2002, and we had the good fortune to just happen to stop by Bill's table, and he was unbelievably like sweet and friendly, and he just chatted to us and was telling us great stories. And so we've had that. Yeah, it's well over 20 years that it's been in our possession. And yeah, it's both of ours.
Yeah. And once again, I could see it from across the world. I knew it was a Sienkiewicz. So, you know, there's it's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, we do have a few like pieces dotted around the house we have a lot of pieces actually by Esad. I really, really want to buy something by Lee at some point. So that's on my list. And then we have quite a few pieces by Peach Momoko as well. We're really good friends with Peach. So we bought some pieces from her when we first met her. So yeah, we're big fans. So yeah, we do have a few pieces, but nothing quite as impressive as you.
No. So artist, collector, entrepreneur, all artist rep all the way through. I mean, you're hitting it from all sides. So once again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, Tamsin, and I can't wait to see you next.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Take care.
Now that we've heard from an art rep in the UK with a little bit of a smaller stable, I wanted to move back to the United States of America with a face that a lot of us will recognize, a close personal friend of mine, somebody that has been an ally of mine and a friend from the very beginning of my collecting journey, the owner and founder of TD Art, Miss Tatiana Dykes. Here she is. Tatiana, how you doing?
Hey, good, Matt. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to anytime.
For those of, the viewers that don't know, Tatiana is the owner and founder of TD Art. Really great stuff. At the end of the video in the link, there will be, first comment will be all the links to the websites of everybody that I'm, interviewing. But Tatiana, I kind of wanted to pass it off to you. Tell me a little bit about TD Art, when it was founded, and, kind of what made you want to be an art rep.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you chose some great reps to interview. There are not a lot of women who do this, and you chose to interview 3 women who do repping. So, I don't think you did that because we were women, but thank you.
No, I was going to say, it actually kind of was like it just ended up working out that way. I said when I did my interview with Tamsin, her and I just have a lot of similar ideas and a lot of the same outlooks. So that was a real easy choice for you. You were one of the first people, that I had dealt with, in my comic book journey and working with, and it was, such a pleasurable experience. So I remember that, and I remember working with you. And then, Gloria taught me so much and pretty much everything I know in this. So it just kind of worked out that, how the chips fell was just that way. But yeah, it's amazing because, I think we need more representation in that space from women, because it's something that is, it's really powerful. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I think there's something inherently about, obviously I'm generalizing here, but a lot of women's personalities and the way that we, can work together with artists and, in a way that makes a lot of sense. So, so to answer your question, so I'm, TD Art has been around I'm currently in year 9. So, started officially January 1st, 2017. I've been collecting art since I was a teenager. So for a lot longer than that, I've been working in the industry in a lot of different ways. But decided to become an art rep, because I knew a lot of artists. I'd been collecting art for a long time. And I felt like I could provide a really good service as somebody who understands both sides of the industry. being able to advocate for the artist and advocate for the buyer. I think that's really important. I think in order to have the best customer service experience, it's really important to be able to understand both sides of the table.
Absolutely. And I think that was something that, was a big part of my journey as well. Is like, I remember having the experiences on the other side of the table, some that were extremely memorable and some that, maybe turned me off, or the piece didn't mean as much or whatever it was. So I tried to use that to meld, what I was going to try to do and, bring, what I thought was the best collector experience. And throughout my time, I just, tried to, I don't think that's a, finite thing. I think it's always growing or, moving or pivoting. But, I remember working with you for the first time and, buying some original art and just picking your brain. And, it was such a great experience. So like for me, I'm a big experience guy. Like each piece I have ties back to an experience or a memory or something like that. And, one of my goals, and I think the goals of a lot of art reps, is to make sure that that experience is still there. Cause, the art's great. It's always amazing, finished product, whatever it is, but the experience to go along with it can also be a very powerful thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people overlook that. And when I say a lot of people, I just mean in general, reps, artists, collectors, right? But for a lot of collectors, it is really important, and it's really important to me as well. And so I wanted to make sure that that experience was there, that people knew that if they needed help, that they could reach out to me and they could talk to me about whatever problem they're having, and I would help, facilitate getting things worked out for them, or, ensuring art is shipped properly and in a timely manner and all of that other stuff. So, yeah, I started out with, I think, about 5 artists. I had asked, just a few friends that I had in the industry, just starting out, like Tony Parker and Sonia Anwar, friends of mine that I had had since before that and didn't have reps. And they were really interested in, jumping on board. It's also a really big thing for me that I am not an artist poacher. To me, it's a really, I always tell people it's like a monogamous relationship or whatever it is that you have worked out, Right, I mean, exactly. We have different kinds of deals worked out with different artists and stuff, but it's really important to me. I want to have good relationships with other art reps. And, so I always make sure I'm not poaching anybody from somebody they're already working with. So
yeah, and that's a side of the business too that can get a little tricky. Things get, wires can get crossed. Things are said that, maybe aren't actually said or whatever it is. And I kind of have, always had the same mentality. And my thing is that if you would like to work with me, I would love, I've been very thankful that, I've been given the opportunity to get my start like you did with Sonia and, Tony in the beginning with Simone and Gloria. But after that, it was kind of one of those things where, like, if you'd like to work with me, the door's open. Let's talk about it and let's go from there. Of course, I have those, I would call them the automatic yeses, where if an artist ever approached me, I don't care who they were repped, if they said, hey, I want to work with you, the answer would be immediately, yes, let's do it. But, I think it's something to be important and cognizant of. It's very important to be cognizant of, that when artists change, it affects other people's business. It affects the customer. So not only, the previous art rep to the new art rep, but also the customers, finding the artist, making sure the artist is, still represented in the way that they're looking for through the transition or whatever it is. So, with me still being extremely small, from you in 9 years to, what are you up to, 25 artists now?
27.
Yeah.
Which I never meant to go to 27, but here we are. It's just
amazing. Yeah, you've amassed such a great, artist stable, and you have so many different styles. You have illustrators, you have painters, you have pencilers, you have a great variety under the umbrella. So I think it's something, that also gets lost sometimes, is like, you can't have, on the art rep side, you can't have 5 watercolor painters, 5, acrylic painters, 5 illustrators, because you start running into, you're selling a lot of the things to the same people. And you have just a great variety of, even if they're in that same painter, one of them's for magic and one of them's for, comic books. You have, I think one of the things I was maybe recently going to buy from your site, I can't remember if they're still up, but it was like, I think they were from, I think it was from Sonia, actually, was the Avatar: The Last Airbender stuff.
Oh, that's from Ryan. From Ryan.
Those were amazing.
Ryan's done a ton of storyboard art.
Yeah. So you have storyboard artists, you have, now was that kind of just how it went, or was that something strategic that you were doing when you were adding people?
That ended up just happening that way. But when I look at adding people, I look at a few different things. The first thing is just, is kind of their goals. Do their goals align with, what I do, and can I provide them a service that will help them? Because I want to make sure that I am helping artists to get their name out there and, be getting work and things. So I do tend to rep a lot of, lesser known artists. I also look at, I have many years of my professional career before I moved into doing all this stuff full time, working in public health. So I have a lot of years of working in, different types of programs, and being a woman and being, I'm half Japanese, so being a person of color and having that background, and having worked in comics since back when women were the anomaly, it's important to me also, representation and things like that.
Yeah.
There's certainly no, I don't say, no, I can't work with you because you don't fit X, Y, and Z. I'll work with all sorts of people. But I really get excited when I can work with an artist I feel needs more representation in whatever way that is.
Yeah, and it's very well said. Like for me, when I first started working with Simone, he doesn't need any type of recognition. I mean, in Italy, he's on the version of the Jimmy Fallon show. He's doing amazing things, but it was harder for me to find his art when I first started looking. And I'm like, man, this shouldn't be. And kind of how we came about it was like, I'm not here to do anything in Europe. I want to have what you have in Europe over here, because if there's me, there's more of me. You know what I mean? There's more people that want. So, kind of when, want their original art. So kind of when like an artist, comes on, or you're looking to bring them on, it's something that you said, I think is very powerful, that I always try to do is like, what's the end goal and how can I help?
Yeah, and all my artists have different needs. I wouldn't be representing that many artists if they all had I don't want to say full time, but needed more time and needed more, had more stuff coming out and whatever. So I rep some artists who mostly work digitally, and mostly am just available for them for commission work or that type of stuff. So by talking with people when they're interested and finding out what they're looking for and seeing if it will work, that can help. With figuring out if it's going to be a good fit. And the other thing is other than when I first started, I don't like recruit artists. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a referral only. And there's a lot of artists I talk to where it doesn't work out, and it's not anybody's fault. It's really just, maybe they were looking for something different than what I offer, or, maybe they weren't ready for a rep at that point, or I've talked to people and then I talk to them again 2 years later and then I rep them. I mean, it's
right.
So,
I think it's a lot of in our industry too, for what we do. I think it's a lot about timing. It's a lot about, are they ready? Are you ready? And does the partnership work out? And as you said, when everybody, and this is something I think that gets lost. Like you said, you wouldn't represent that many artists if everybody needed a certain amount. And, some artists, they want the rep to, you're booking flights, you're booking hotels, you're booking their convention schedules. It's not just shipping their pieces that you sell off their website, securely and getting them out there. It's, some have you run their social media. Some want certain amount of impressions a month and things like that. So, it gets, some are very easygoing and just say, hey, here's the art and you take it from there and that's it. And I'll figure out my way. And others have a different version of an expectation of what should be done for them and what is going to be done for them. And I think, something that's super important is always being, clear about that. And then if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. I mean, try to remain friends, you keep it moving forward. But some people have one expectation of what an art rep should do. And then others think, well, you don't need to do that. I'm my own person. I can do that. So it's just, kind of how they've either been treated in the past or what they view that this job entails. Yeah.
And a big part of my job, when I'm talking to artists and kind of, trying to figure things out, I go, man, a big part of my job is just dealing with the crap that you shouldn't have to deal with.
The one thing I always say is if the main focus of my job should be to keep you focused on your work.
Exactly.
So if I can do that, and, I said this prior, and broken record, I'll say it on anything that I ever do talking about art rep is, being an art rep is, what looks easy on the front isn't always. And I think, something that I've always viewed, and that I know you view the same, is that if you take care of the artist and you take care of the customer, you get taken care of on the back end. If you can make the artist happy and you can make the customer happy, the business goes on its own. And I think sometimes it gets a little convoluted, too many things going on, this and that. And like, if you can really have some perspective and take a step back and say, is my artist happy? If they are, that's when they're they're cranking out and delivering the best work. Mm-hmm. And if the customer gets it and they have that experience, they get the photo, they get everything, they come and it's in a floating U-line, S2 2600 beautiful box, and they get that experience. Then the business does well and you keep moving forward. But it's not so much about worrying about the business. It's worrying about the artist and the customer. And then that kind of comes forward. And I know we've talked about that privately, but it's something that you and I both hold, very, very true to how we run our companies.
Yeah, I think it's really important to look to, I've had people ask me, I want to be an art rep, and, what do you think? And then I always ask them, well, why? Why do you want to be an art rep? What are your plans? Because I make really clear to people that you don't become an art rep to make money.
Yeah. Say it louder for the people in the back.
People think that it's like this easy money. And I go, look, every once in a while, you're going to get a sale that just the one sale was really easy, and, you get your cut, and it's a lot of money. But there are 90+% of the time it's way more work. I mean, making way less than minimum wage. Yep. And professionally, with my medical and healthcare, public health background, I can make more money doing that.
Absolutely.
I do this because, so that's why I always ask people, why are you going to do it? Because if you want to be an art rep, you have to do it because you're incredibly passionate about the medium, and that you are incredibly passionate about working with artists and getting their art into the hands of collectors. You want to build that community, and that has to be really important to you, because if it's not, and it's just a job, you will probably make more money doing most other things.
Whatever else.
Because there's just a lot of things that go into being art rep people don't think about. Like, I have to have business insurance.
Yeah.
That's thousands of dollars a year.
Absolutely.
Ordering shipping supplies, and like, where am I going to put that? I mean, I don't even have a house right now. I'm staying at Joe's
for me,
mom's house.
The boxes, the shipping, the masonite boards, I'm thankful to have a heated garage, and I carved out an entire space where I store it all. But like, realistically, before that, I was considering before I moved to where I am now, I was considering having to get like a storage unit to house all the things. And, it's, like you said, some artists are like, oh, just tell me when it sells and I'll ship it out on their own. And then other artists are like, here's all my art. Everything from start to finish, you handle it. And then everybody sees the sales, but what they don't see is, and I'm thankful for it, I want to make something very clear. Anybody that ever reaches out to DiTullio Art Collective and asks anything about original art, I try to remember that at one point, when I first made my first CAF account, I didn't even understand what was the difference between an illustration and a pinup, or, so whatever somebody.
When you're using that drop down box, I don't know.
Exactly. The drop down, like, I don't know what this is. It's a commission, but is it an illustration? I'm not sure. I always am thankful for any questions, and I try to remember that everybody starts somewhere. So I always treat every customer with, and that with your healthcare background and my business background, Tamsin brought it up, with her background working in makeup. When you have that personal experience and you have that customer facing mentality, you have to be nice to everyone. But, not everybody sees up until they are not nice to you. I'll add that. Yeah. But everybody sees the sales or sees the table. What you don't see is the hours of negotiation, the hours of back and forth of, things not working out, but then, coming to fruition years later on a single piece. I've had that happen. I had somebody, a client and myself, go back and forth, over 3 years, from when I first started to now.
Well, you wanted Tyler's Death Dealer cover for a couple of years, and then you were just
that was an 18-month piece for me. Yeah. Sometimes it's the right time, sometimes it's not, but always treating everybody with respect, and having your phone on. having your phone on at all times. So I wanted to kind of go back to how many artists you have and just give me some of the ones, because I know you have near, you have all different time zones and scoping. So even communicating sometimes is a full-time job.
I will tell you, I am so incredibly thankful for WhatsApp.
Same. That's all. I don't even, for my art stuff, I don't text. It's all WhatsApp.
Yeah. So, I mean, I text plenty of my artists because, most of my artists live in the US, but Sonia lives in Canada and Near lives in Israel. And, usually like Near and I usually email, but sometimes like I just want to know something right away. And being able to WhatsApp him and it doesn't cost anything is
and hitting fantastic. The voice record where you can just send it and then they get it and you get a voice record back, for both of the Simones and now Assad, it's just a lot of vocal messages, just like we're having a conversation throughout the day or whatever it is. And, sometimes a client will make an offer on a piece and I'm like, hey, I have to check with so-and-so, whatever artist it is. Say it's Simone and he's in the middle of painting a cover and they don't check their phones. That's not on the top of their list. And then the client, it's like, 12 hours later, next morning, they're like, okay, so what's the answer? I'm like, I know you might find this super hard to believe. I don't have one, but it's the truth. I mean, I don't know what to say. Yeah.
I had a meeting with an artist who shall remain nameless at this point because it's in relation to OAX 26.
Okay.
And I don't want any people to... no spoilers, and also people getting their hopes up about it.
It's okay. Anyway, you can tell us who it is. We won't tell anyone.
Yeah. I'm not saying it. I know better.
I tried.
You tried. Maybe, we'll have like a Reels blooper later and I'll say it. But, so I was chatting with him about OAX for next year. And as we're talking, he's varnishing a painting. And a friend of mine had just spot like the painting the day before. And I was like, oh, I know what that is. And he had varnished it. And he was like letting it dry and he was checking to make sure there wasn't any lint or anything on it. But, it's part of it as a rep is, and I'm not his rep, he's just, he's an artist that I'm friendly with, is we need to make ourselves easy. And how do you want to communicate with me and what works for you? Some of my artists want to talk on the phone. Some of them just want to text. Some of them just want to email. Some of them, want a video call. And it's the same thing with clients.
Yep.
I had one client, I felt awful because my ringer is always off on my phone. Like I have the most millennial, like my ringer is always off.
Silent 24/7.
Yes. It's always on silent. Because I tell people, you can text me or message me anytime you want. My phone is always on silent unless I'm literally waiting for like some sort of incredibly important phone call. And I felt bad because I had to tell him, like, I need to schedule a time to talk to you because he would just call me. He was trying to buy some art. He was new to one of my artists. He collects mostly older stuff. He's worked with plenty of reps like, Albert and Berkey and folks like that.
Yeah.
But, he wanted to get into some of this newer art and he didn't know the artist and he wanted to talk to me. And I'm like, okay, let's schedule a call. And I said, I will do my best to answer my phone when you call me. But please know that my phone is always on silent. I'm very easily distracted, so I have to keep it like that. But yeah, we get, text messages, phone calls, Facebook messages, Instagram, Twitter, X, WhatsApp, email, personal email. I now, calf email.
I think one thing that goes, it's just part of the job. And I think you said something super, super important. And you've been doing it for 9 years, and I'll let you chime in after, my portion of it. So, I've been working in, DiTullio Art Collective and in the art rep game for about 4 years now. And I'm still very new. I have a ton to learn, but I don't think it will. Actually, I know it won't. But the reason why I do it is because I think sometimes this gets lost in perspective. I said earlier, it's a very powerful thing, is like, you can go up and like pick up a golf club and go to the driving range and hit some balls and like feel pretty good about a couple that you hit. Art is a different thing. It's not like going and picking up a basketball and making a couple shots and feeling great. There is something super special to me, and I don't think it'll ever go away, of watching someone start from a blank masonite board, a blank piece of paper, whether it's a 9x12 or an 18x24, whether it's Strathmore board
card,
or a wrapped canvas down to a sketch card.
Yeah.
In creating something that is going to give your client a memory and I say this is the most important, is moments of the artist's life to put into it. Like this is their job. And when someone says to me, like you said, why do you want to be an art rep? And if it's to make money, hey, and you can do it, more power to you. Great. But for me is, something I learned very quickly in just a personal trait of mine is I never even, you can ask my mother or father. I was never a big proponent of busy work. I didn't like doing things that didn't matter. And when I got into art repping, I realized that like this really matters. Like this is how some of my artists pay their bills. This is how they pay their car payment. This is how they pay their house, their mortgage. This is super important. And also, this is how collectors build their collection. This is how clients become friends. This is how you establish relationships. So everything I feel like that I do, yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, you're always available. For me, the money's almost tertiary. It's way behind. I love the experience. I love getting to watch them create and watching a happy client, because I know that feeling and I want to continue to have that feeling. And if I can keep providing that to other people, over 9 years for you and 25 artists, when you get a shipment in from your artist and you're opening through, it's like, this is great. Like, look at this stuff. It's amazing. So I think sometimes collectors maybe get like, well, you have so much art. You have this, like every piece of art, whether it's behind me or in a portfolio, I love to look at it.
I look through every single package, and it just doesn't matter if it's for me or if it's an art drop. I mean, I have to look through everything. And you hinted on this a little bit, and I want to say this very clearly for all the collectors watching. For the vast majority of artists, the money that helps them to survive and get by and pay their bills is art sales. Most artists do not make enough money to get by on the commission rate that they get from any of the companies they work for. The page rates just are not, and this is not any company's fault. I'm not blaming anybody. This is just a truth.
It's just a neutral, truthful statement, because I agree with what you're about to say.
So just because of where the industry is, many people know the comic book industry has struggled the last few decades, and it's doing well, much better than it had been for a while, but it's not this booming thing that it was 30 years ago. Companies can't afford to pay more, so a lot of artists are making the same page rate now that they were making when you and I were kids in school, and obviously we know that life costs way more now than it did then. So not only is owning a piece of art from an artist nice, and you can enjoy it and you have the experience and you get to remember that experience with a piece of art on your wall, that is also what's allowing the artist and the industry to exist. Collectors are incredibly important in this space, because without you, these artists can't do what they do. And what they do is incredibly powerful in storytelling, in the visual aspect of it, in inspiration. We learned so much during COVID. People have always, when I was a teenager, I did theater and music, and I did all this stuff. I did everything except draw. I did all the other arts except draw, essentially. And, you would go see your guidance counselor, and you talk about your future and stuff. And I wanted to go to acting school. I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's good to be able to do music and other things as well. And they told me, oh, you are way too smart to get into the arts. Way too smart. And, I listened to them, and it's here nor there, right? But we need to stop the narrative that art is not important, that it's not, as a profession. Art itself, the physical medium, is valued, but the profession often is undervalued.
Yeah, and it's something. I'll give you my very quick experience, and it changed my life, to be quite frank. Was I was into comics. I think that's kind of the gateway for a lot of people that collect original art. They started with comics, and Well, my friends were like, playing Texas Hold'em because that was like big thing on like World Series of Poker on ESPN when I was growing up. Like I was reading like the FF Omnibus because I was like playing catch up. Other people were like, oh, you should read this and you should read this. And I just had a list. I had like a LG flip phone at the time. So there was no notes section. So I had a notepad.
Like the Marvel masterpiece.
Yeah, I had a Marvel, like, black and white notebook that I would open up. And when somebody would tell me to read something, I read it. And, whether it was like Old Man Logan or Ghost Box or, Joe Q's Marvel Knights, whatever it was, I was just infatuated with it. And then, so I started building my comic collection. And when I ended up selling it to, buy my house, I found out that I was like, wait a second. I love these books and I love, I had them all CGC graded and they meant a lot to me. I remember who I picked them up from, Dale Roberts, Harley Yee, all the guys. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I got my first piece of original art and it was a piece by Tyler Kirkham. And it was a published page, it had Black Bolt on it. And I was like, this is the one that made the book. And like and I had been going to cons for years, but I was like blinders on for comic books. When I started realizing that I could get the piece that made the book, I know it sounds like super rudimentary, but it was just like an aha moment.
You don't make that connection. I didn't make that connection to magic art until
and then all of a sudden I started asking questions like Tyler right away. I'm like, so how long does a page like this take you? How, do you do the pencils or who does the inks? This like, I just started like going in because I was like, this is this guy's life. This is he draws for a living, and I get like a piece of his career. And that just set me off. So I have to, say I'm just like you. I mean, the collectors in our hobby are so important, and you have no idea how much one art sale can really help someone. And from the outside, it may look like they're doing fine and they're doing phenomenal, and they're not. They need help. Yeah. They're doing great stuff, and you scroll by and you're like, oh yeah, that's really nice. Maybe someday. And if that someday comes and it's on the day that they need it, I've seen art sales that have changed people's whole demeanor, whole outlooks on their view of where they're going and on their career. And it's a super powerful thing. So that's one of the things I'm, most thankful for is like what I get that I'm doing for my job. It's important on both sides. It helps collectors build amazing things, and it helps artists literally send their kids to school, pay their rent, buy a new car from the one that they've had for 2 decades, move into a new home. And like, I know it sounds super corny, but if I can be like, hey, I helped you pay for like that door knocker, I feel great about it. Yeah, like I feel good. You know what I mean? So it's
someone's doing pretty good if they're buying a door knocker, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, well, if it's an old Italian house, I don't know. You can't even like take one of those off. It's like written in the bylaws.
It is. You take it off and you just get arrested immediately the next day. Yeah, I think as art reps, it's really important for us to be that go-between, and we are representing not just the artist, but the medium. And so I work with a lot of artists who are either newer to the industry or maybe do a lot of indie work. And I want to get their art in front of other eyeballs. I think that, like IC3 was just a fantastic example of showing that, we have some amazing collectors in our community who have already been collecting indie art, and then some collectors who hadn't been, who went to that show and had a great time. And, learning that there are so many more artists out there. And if we want to continue to see this amazing art, if we want to continue to have these indie books or have these artists move on to some of the titles that we like from the big two or whatever.
Right.
In order for that to happen, they need to be able to make enough money to continue, right? So I see my job as an art rep very, like, one of the most important things is really getting their art in front of eyeballs. I've done an art book, a TDR art book the last 2 years.
I know that's a big project of yours, and not that DiTullio Art Collective hasn't noticed, but I know how much work it takes. So I have to tell you, you are a rock star for putting that book together because it's a labor of love.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is. It's not. I don't do that to make money. Mm-hmm. I'm doing this with my arm because I have the books are right there. It's something that, the print run is, as much as I can, like, pretty much handle, and, with the space and stuff that I have. And then, you get the book and you might know a couple of the artists that are in there, but then there's a ton of artists you don't know. And it's been a phenomenal way to be able to get stuff out there. It's also been a great entry point for a lot of collectors to be able to get art, because there can be a piece one of my artists will draw for the book, and now you can buy that pinup and it's way cheaper than, if it was, published through like another company or whatever, but you're getting a published piece of art.
Yeah. Or you see it and you're like, wow, I love that style. I would love it for my favorite character. And that's how, the commission starts. So, I mean, what you do for your artists for that is really great, because like you said, it's all about eyeballs. It's all about more people seeing it, because the medium itself is super important. And the people that are creating this sometimes just need the right set of circumstances to become something extremely valuable, or, collectible in the hobby or whatever it is. So I think, that art book that you do, because you have so many great artists and so many different styles, it's a great viewing point. It's a great array of, what your artists can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's just one thing that I do. A lot of reps do different things, but that's one thing that I do that I think is a lot of fun, that a lot of collectors enjoy. And it's a entry point of, your $25. I also do a mystery sketch cover version that people really, really like. And then I get some of my bigger artists to do some of the covers too, so that, the reality is that collectors also like the financial security of things. So you're paying this price, that you're always getting at least the value of what you paid, but you have a chance of getting, a sketch from Joe Benitez, or, he's probably one of the best known artists that I rep, right? And normally that would cost $4 times
$500.
Yeah. So, throwing stuff like that in there. And at the end of the day, the artists all get it. Yep. I was, because I can only pay my artists so much for these sketch covers. And so I brought them to, I brought some to OAX because Joe Benitez was there this year. And I was like, this is how much I can pay you if you can just do like 3. Because I gave them to him like on Thursday. And if you can just give them back to me by Saturday morning or whatever. And, I just was like, just do a really quick head sketch. I just was asking for like super quick, just
you
do me a favor.
No,
of course he did.
They're just
out of the park, full color headshots. They would normally cost hundreds of dollars more. And then he goes, and you're not paying me for these. So,
but he gets it. He
gets it, right? Yeah. It's even if it's my 27 artists, they don't all know each other, but they realize that this is still a family. Mm-hmm. And it's important for them to all support one another. And they do that because they all get where they've been, where they've been in specific spots and things have been difficult. Plus the reality is they're all also my friends, right? Mm-hmm. I work with these artists because I like them.
Yes.
And they like me. And, being my friend is not like required for us to work together, but we are going to build that relationship because, we are working together, right? We have to work together in order for this to be as successful as possible. And, I'll share all the other social medias because people go, well, I don't expect you to share that because that's not a thing you're selling and you're not going to make money on it. I'm like, why do I care?
Right.
You're not going to only share
your sales
appearances that you're going to do in the US, right? You want him to also make money when he's working with Gloria.
Yep.
So it's this big picture and it's so many different pieces. So when people go, well, what do you do as an art rep? It's like, well, here's the basics, but
yeah. And I think that, we're only doing a 40-minute snippet of what it is, but I think it's super important to get it out there. And everybody has different perspectives as an art rep of, size of the team, what you want to do, how you want to do it. And I think that's the cool part about the game as well, is you can do it your own way, your own style, and, kind of build it around the values that you hold important. And then, things fall where they may after that. And, speaking of, does TD Art, you have any plans for the future? I mean, I know you're doing this absolutely full time now, along with working with CAF. And, I'm excited to see what's coming in the future. Is there anything you want to share, or are you keeping it close to the vest for OAX 2026?
No, it's just making me laugh because I was like, Matt and I get to art rep as much as Casra will let us.
Fair.
No, Casra, and I mean, working for CAF is just the best thing. Speaking of a family, It's just been an amazing, amazing experience. I remember when they told me that they wanted to hire you, which I had to keep my mouth shut. I mean, you knew it was happening, so you and I were talking about it, but like, I was so excited. I was like, I love Matt. Like, you and I hit it off the first time we met at Como. Like, was it the first? Well, you came the second year. You missed the first year, right? I
missed the first year. Yep.
Yeah. So 2018, and man, we just hit it off. And you just know, your people. But anyway, jokes aside, I'm working on. Well, we have Comic Art Live coming up pretty soon. So going to be working with my artists on if we want to have any special offerings and things for that. So I don't have anything planned yet, but I'm already working on the next volume of the art book. So volume 3. I did a theme the first couple years, and I've decided to change that. So this is you guys are getting this first publicly. You all are getting this first.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. So I didn't want the artist to feel, so the first year it was fantasy. And then the second year, the theme was dystopian futures. And with fantasy, it was just so easy to get the book filled. I didn't think anything of it. But dystopian futures was harder because not everybody had stuff. And then I thought, why am I limiting my artists? It's one thing if I'm doing an anthology for something and it needs a theme. But if I'm creating this book with my artists every year, I just want it to be a best of. So it's going to be like best of whatever, and then just, volume 3. And then the artists can submit to me their favorite pieces from the year. And that can be, and so, you'll get a mix of what is already in there. So some of it's stuff that's already published.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff
but
that
you're going to get to see such a scope of each of your artists' work. You know what I mean? I think then
there's new stuff too, which is fantasc.
Mark me down for one of the books, please.
Nice. Yeah. When you tell people to draw whatever they want, so I rep Alex Conat, who has, done mostly work for Aspen.
For those who don't know.
He's done a little bit of work for, like Fox. He's done some movie stuff. Assassin's Creed, the first Deadpool movie, but mostly he's worked with Aspen Comics. Phenomenal artist. I've known Alex since he was first starting out, and like he'd be trying to sketch something at the booth at San Diego, and like Peter would take it from him and erase the nose and make him redraw it. Right. So I've known Alex for a long time, and I've met Alex's dad, who used to be a collector. And when I'm able, and when my artists have time, meaning I don't ever take client slots, but when they have the ability and they have like an extra slot, I'll jump on it and I'll say, draw whatever you want. We might have a conversation about what are things that we both like.
Right.
I have a killer Ghibli commission that Mike McCone did for me that I don't have. I got a
McCone this year at OAX from Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah, he killed it. So and so this was, kind of an Alex, do whatever you want. He doesn't normally do color either. There's just pops of it here, but like
the green going up the trees, stunning.
So to me, this is a great example of like when you tell somebody, just give me your favorite piece for the year, just draw whatever you want or whatever. That's what you're going to get. And so that's what I'm going to be doing with the art book moving forward. And I'm always what worked, what didn't work, how do we make it better kind of a person.
Yep.
And so I can't guarantee it'll be like that forever, but that's what I want to do this year. And I feel like it's really going to get fans really excited because it's going to be some of the greatest stuff they saw over the year that wasn't published. And now it's published. Or I do have a few artists who go, I'm going to start it earlier. Last year was crazy since I moved and I started it too late. But this year I'm going to give my artist a lot of time so that I can say, hey, I want you to draw. If you don't have anything you want to put in, draw something for the book. You have 3 months. You give them plenty of time.
Right. Give them plenty of runway on it.
And then we'll have pieces available and things, out of the book as well. And then they get to draw what they want. And then you just get killer pieces.
I mean, I'm excited for it. I want to see what's in the book. I'm sure it'll spur me to get something from, one of your amazing artists. But, Tatiana, I wanted to say, I'm sure it won't be the only time that you're on the show. And I'm sure you'll be a recurring guest here. But I wanted to say thank you for coming on and just, pulling back the curtain a little bit, showing, behind. And if, this is an episode that gets some traction and people want to hear more and go more in depth, I think I'd love to, do something like that with you. But, for those of you that don't know, if you've never bought anything from TD Art, I would say this if she wasn't on the show. It's a pleasurable experience. Go check out the website and, you're going to be working with one of the most customer service driven art reps, in the industry. So you're in great hands. And Tatiana, you've helped me out a long way throughout the year. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, that's important to me. And when I found out you were going to be doing repping and the way you were doing it, I was like, that makes so much sense. I was so excited. I've loved Simone Bianchi for years. And, now finally getting to know him a little bit more personally, too, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I was really excited that you two were working together. I knew that was going to be a great fit. And then I think you working with DeMayo's been phenomenal. I love his work. God, there was that one cover I wanted so bad at OAX. I know I'll come back around to getting something.
Yeah, we'll make something happen for you.
And then Assad's phenomenal. I got a commission from Assad a few years back, and Tamsin helped me out. This is before she was doing it officially.
Right.
But she helped me out, getting that commission from him. And you just work with great people, and it's exciting. It's an exciting thing to work in. It's a passion thing. Oh, and I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah, of course.
That's okay. We're talking about the money and all of that other stuff, and I want to let collectors know that not everybody does this, but I do also sometimes take consignment sales.
Oh, okay. Good note, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't generally buy collections. People ask me, do you buy collections? And I don't have that kind of money. But I do consignment sales, some things more than others. But, if you have things that you're interested in selling, so that you can buy more art, because that is a big part of kind of how just, a lot of people can afford art.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle, right? Reach out to me and be happy to chat about that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tatiana. I appreciate it as always. And like I said, I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks. Take care.
Right. Thank you. Now to transition from the U.S. to the country of my ancestors, my favorite country in the world to visit. I'm going to take us to Italy and have an interview with somebody who has been a mentor, an influencer, and somebody that's just taught me the ropes of the industry that I couldn't be more thankful to have on this show is the one and only Gloria Bianchi. Ciao, Gloria. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Thank you so much for coming onto the show and taking time out of your busy schedule to do a little chat with me.
Thank you for having me. I hope I'll be able to give you all nice and complete answers. I know I'm the only not English-speaking mother tongue, so I feel the pressure of it, but I'll do my best.
Listen, your English, as we know, is much better than my Italian, which has been a nonstop. A nonstop. I've been working on it for 5 years now, and I have very little Italian adjectives other than like plunger. I know plunger, which has been very good.
But anyway, thank you very much for it.
No, of course, and I think this was something that I really wanted to do, and have on from all different, countries, walks of life, different things of becoming an art rep. Because as I've said in, some different times and some different places, being an art rep's it's a fun time. It's a blast. But, sometimes I think it maybe gets looked at as it's, somewhat easy, or you just become friends with an artist and you do it from there. And I just wanted to have, a conversation of, people that have been doing it for all different times with Tamsin, you and Tatiana, different lengths, myself, and just have a little bit more of a conversation on essentially what an art rep does and how different it is from what Tamsin does to what Tatiana does to what you do to what I do, and how everybody has a different spot in how they do their job. So Gloria, talk to me a little bit about what you did before you were an art rep, and then what made you want to make the change and work with your brother and become his full-time art rep.
So what I did before starting has really nothing to do with what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Because
and to be fair, Tamsin was in makeup and Tatiana was in healthcare. So nobody really was close before they made
I studied German literature. So my idea was to either become a teacher or keep studying literature. But then I was hired we live in Tuscany, so in an area very rich with tourists coming from abroad. So for about 4 or 5 years, I worked for a company renting big properties in the countryside, in the Tuscan countryside. And I worked for them. But at the same time, I started going to my brother's studio in my free time. And I started, because I liked the difference between what I did for my job and going to the studio, which at that time seemed to me like you don't have to dress up, you don't have to talk to people you're not familiar with. It was all so confidential that it became my free time to help, doing the studio stuff. And I liked it a lot. But our parents said, you will never work together. We don't want you two guys to work together. We want your relationship to be something else from work. So if you have to have an argument, you have to be at the same level. You don't have to work for your brother and maybe not tell him the truth because it's your boss. So they really were very, very scared about, we as Italians are, very well, are famous for, handling family businesses, but family businesses involve some kind of, tough
there
moments.
can be a tenseness or a little drama sometimes, for sure. That's how it goes.
Right. And because Simone and myself are the only two brothers, they were very scared about this. So the only thing they said is, please never work together. If it's your hobby, you want to help your brother wants someone to trust, but it mustn't be your full-time job. So I started this job as a part-time job.
Okay.
Still keeping my earning separated from what I did. But then at a certain point, things changed, and we basically got at the time when original art really became bigger and bigger and bigger, and handling Simone's stuff was more and more time consuming, even if at that time Sal Abbinanti handled Simone's art. And he's the one that brought Simone's original art into the US.
Correct.
So I didn't have to take care of all that part because Sal did it better than I did. But I had to do the everyday job at the studio. Until at a certain point it became so much that Simone said, I need you full time. And so we had a conversation with Sal, who probably also because of his Italian roots understood the situation even before finishing telling him the thing, and was, as he always is, great in understanding and helping us to work together. So
in around what year was that when you went full time working with your brother?
What? Sorry?
What year was that?
It was probably 2008, 2009. I don't remember exactly. But
Gotcha.
So it's been about 20 years we've been working together on several levels. But then around 2010, something like that, we started officially.
So then you had, you went to work, you're working with your brother. As we said, that's kind of, the Italian way is you have the family business and you work closely. And, when you started working with your brother, because you said you kind of did more of the studio day-to-day stuff, then you start working with Simone full time and you're traveling to conventions with him. You're going around, you're interacting with the clients. How was that for the first time? Because one of the big things that I was, nervous about, and I've been very lucky to have great teachers like Sal, like you, through my time as being an art rep, and, you kind of went in for your first time. Do you remember what the first convention was and when you started dealing with clients, or how was that experience when you because it's different when you have the customer right in front of you and you're doing the dealings?
So the first thing that shocked me was that people were talking about my brother as if they knew him, and they had never met him, but they knew his work. And to me, it was on a side shocking. On the other side, I felt very grateful because they spoke with, of course, with affection. But for the first few seconds, it's always a bit strange or the first time someone came and asked for my brother for an autograph. It seemed very weird to me. So these were the first moments. And then being at the show, the first shows we did, they were they all were much more successful than we wouldn't have expected. So the first time we did a convention, we said, okay, let's get a booth and see how it goes. And it went much, much beyond our expectations. So I can say that we started, the start was smoother than other activities because we didn't start from scratch, from zero.
Correct.
So first of all, having had Sal, and then having started for Simone to publish with DC and Marvel, made everything so smoother, because you had a base that you were, kind of there from. So that was a nice transition over. Exactly.
So you go from German literature, making sure people are taken care of, to going to selling comic book art, your original art, autographs, books, products of your brother's work. At your first kind of like year in, when you're doing it full time, are you like, this is what I want to do? Like, this is what I really enjoy, going out and working with my brother and doing this?
When Simone and I started working together, there was nobody doing my job. So there was nobody there telling me, you could do this way, or it was all new for both of us.
Right.
So even if I went to Simone and asked him for an advice, he wouldn't know, because he said, whatever mistake you do, you will learn by doing things.
Correct.
So I can give you a few indications, but all I want to do is draw and paint. So try to build your job and let's see what happens, you know? So I remember I tried to look at Sal as much as I could when he came to Italy or when we were in the US. Even if when we were in San Diego, it was almost impossible to look at Sal because
right.
booth is big, there's always a crowd. So, but yeah, basically we started and we didn't know what to expect.
So
when
it was a trial.
It was a very small company. And the idea of opening it, from a legal financial point of view seemed weird. Yeah. But and we started like that. And
so you had trial and error and trial by fire. You learned as you went, and you built, your business as you went. You learned from your mistakes and you learned from your successes and built out from there, with your brother and how it was done. It's amazing.
Exactly. First of all, Simone has always worked a lot. So he said, I can't spend hours teaching you how I did the things on my own before you arrived. And then I'm not sure if the way I did it was right. So just do. And if it's wrong, we'll solve it in one way or another.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And also, that his nature is much less paranoid than my nature. So he was it's going to be all right. And I started, thinking about it and wonder if it was okay or not. So
much more detail oriented for the plan, I would say. You're definitely a planner. Simone has always had the luxury of this, from his amazing paintings, normally, to be quite honest, when he shows up, it works out. But to build out a company around it and start thinking of, the future things that you could do and where you are now, it's truly impressive. So I hope, you have some perspective every once in a while and take a step back and understand what you've done.
Simone is much more, he risks much more, and he believes that things are going to happen.
Yep.
I'm much more practical, and he has the general idea. Basically what happens in our studio is he has a general idea, and that's it. And I have to find
very general.
So he's much freer in his way of thinking, and I'm always saying this can be an issue, this can be an issue. So I always look like the negative, thinker, but actually I'm trying to, make it from an idea to
a reality. And I think it's great that you guys have kind of that contrast in thinking, because it helps, keep everybody grounded, moving forward, and like you said, more practical to figuring out, can we make this happen in this timeline? Can it be done in this amount of time, and when we have this show coming, or, whatever it is. So, I think one thing that I definitely wanted to speak to you about, because I think it's something different than any other art rep I've seen do. And the main reason why I wanted to have you on is because I've attended these, and I've seen, and I know, the work that goes into them. I wanted to talk to you about something that you and Simone do, is scheduling these large scale exhibitions in Italy, and these exhibits of his work, throughout the years, and the sheer amount of original artwork and the time and effort that goes into curating one of these. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it due to COVID reasons, one of Simone's biggest events. So first, let's talk about the Amazing Talent event. It was held in Città di Castello, correct?
Right.
And, if you could just tell us a little bit about, that building, how many pieces were there, and like from when you started until the exhibition opened, what was the timeline like for you to build something like that? Because I remember seeing the boards and the pieces and the layouts from pictures in the studio. And I think some people think, that these exhibitions just happen, and the amount of time and effort in calling and speaking with the building managers in the city to make sure it's, applicable and all these things. It's really a labor of love to get it created, so then people can come in and appreciate Simone's work.
Right. So first of all, let me start by saying this. A lot of artists, I think, do not consider it so important to do exhibitions. Simone and myself have a different opinion, because it's true, it takes months and months and energy to do an exhibition, and apparently it's not something you get paid for. But the perception that people have in seeing your art live, if you're a painter, I'm not talking about people working digitally, of course. If you are a painter, if you are a traditional artist, having people seeing your art live is so different than, just seeing a scan or a print. And this is something we believe a lot in, and we have always believed in, and after the experiences we had and the feedbacks we had, we believe even more. So it's something we care about a lot. Now, the first exhibition in Città di Castello was really challenging, because now the place was amazing, the Palazzo Vitelli in Sant'Egidio. When we first saw it, Simone felt the pressure of, is my art as good as the place that hosts the exhibition? Because it was breathtaking, literally. Then the curator...
In what general, just for the viewers, like in what general region of Italy is that building?
In the center of Italy, Umbria. So southern, between Rome, let's say very, very generally, between Rome and Tuscany, in the middle, let's say.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you.
And then we had an amazing curator of the exhibition, who's also a journalist, and one of the biggest voices in Italy to talk about comics, Riccardo Corbò. And so with the the organizers that were really an incredible source of availability, help, everything you can think about, and a super curator. It was possible to arrange an exhibition in 2020. So basically, everything was cancelled, and we didn't know until the beginning of May whether the exhibition would be done or not. So we couldn't go ahead too much. But then at the beginning of May,
to put it in perspective real quick, you do months long of work, you're ready to go, and then COVID happens. And I remember having my flight scheduled, ready to come see the event. And then, unfortunately, the world shut down. There was just no way for myself or anybody that wanted to come and, see that exhibition. So, when that happened, were you and Simone just like, oh no, like this is
no,
you can't
First
imagine.
of all, when we got there one day before the opening, and when we saw how it had been set up, it was, for me too, it was overwhelming. And then we were coming out of a time when nothing was visible, possible.
Nothing was open.
A lot of collectors from Italy came from the different regions, and we all were watching the exhibition together.
Amazing.
So that was, we said this with some of the because then at night there was a reception dinner. The organizers, they are called Amici del Fumetto. They booked rooms for the collectors who had lent their original art. So it was like a free weekend in the middle of a pandemic, And then after the end of the exhibition, everything closed again. And it felt like, was it real what we lived that weekend? As if, a dream weekend, really. But to answer to your question, yes, it takes months. First of all, because we need the art from the art collectors. So we've got to, first of all, have an idea of what the exhibition must be on. And then to select the pieces that we would really like to be exhibited. And then we got to get in touch with the collectors and see what their intent is, if they want to, if we can borrow their art, because this means that people won't have it for 5-6 months.
I was just about to say, so people to understand, when they put together this exhibition, guys, it's, it's something for me. I've had pieces in both of them, which I've been very honored to have, is, you don't have your art for 5-6 months, but it goes up in this stunning building, and you have other art appreciators or people that are just walking through the exhibition to really go through and appreciate, an artist's work throughout their career. And, Gloria, when you're reaching out to, because it wasn't only Italian collectors. You had Croatian collectors, you had European, Middle Eastern collectors, United States collectors, all sending this work in. And I remember hearing the number. I'm sure maybe you can't remember off the top of your head, but do you remember how many total pieces were there at Amazing Talent?
It was 220.
Think about that. 220 pieces throughout an entire palazzo, to be able to walk through, Simone's career, essentially from start to what he was doing currently, because obviously when you're doing that, he's also creating specialty pieces just for that event. So while you're working on the one end to, build out, work with the event organizers, lay out the rooms, the Marvel theme rooms, the DC rooms, Simone's creating specialty pieces just for those events.
Don't forget one aspect that is very important. When you are an artist working either for Marvel or for DC or for Image, and you want to make an exhibition, and the exhibition will have a catalog, in order to do this catalog, you have to have the Marvel's permission to do that.
Correct. To make the catalog for the exhibition.
Of course, so you have to submit the pieces that will be featured. So it's a back and forth. Like we were talking about the exhibition in Città di Castello, And then we did another one in 2023 in Livorno at the Granai di Villa Mimbelli. In that exhibition, for example, there are, our memories of the two of them for different reasons can be, but, very, very precious. And in Città di Castello, what they did more is they did an immersive room with Simone's pieces coming to life. But in order to do that, you have to, of course, have Marvel's permission to do that. So the curator, who is a professor at the University of Florence, who teaches history of art, but has a very open eye on contemporary art and on comics. He really wanted to do something very impressive and very important. And I know he and the Fondazione Livorno, so all the organizers shared a lot of messages to make sure that they and Marvel were on the same page, that everything was approved.
Right.
So that necessarily takes more time. And it very often looks like, we are not going to make it. And for some, I don't know, it's difficult to explain, but at a certain point it clicks and everything is okay. The catalog
falls into place.
Ready, you have it in your hands, everything is ready, and you get to the opening day, and then people come and look at the art.
So amazing talent finishes. Then to fast forward to the second exhibition is the one in Livorno. And that was what, 3 years later?
It was 3 years later.
So 3 years after, you take on another massive exhibition project. And for this one, I was able to attend, and I got to go to the building with Simone. And for me, I think what it did was it was a bridging gap between comic book art and fine art. It was something where I walked in and I've been to, art museums in New York or in Florence or, all around. When I walked in, I felt like it was a fine art museum that was for my taste, that was for comic book art. And it was something super powerful. And to get to walk in there with Simone was also, a blessing as well. But, the layout of that event, the historical building it was in. And then in that one, they also did something that was really amazing with all of the panning screens, where Simone's work was coming out of that. Now, do you remember how many pieces did you have for the Livorno exhibition? I believe wasn't it a little smaller?
It was a little smaller as a number of pieces. I think about 120 pieces. Mm-hmm. But what was unique in the Livorno exhibition is that there is this big villa next to the sea, and in this villa there is the Museo Fattori. So the Macchiaioli are a very important Italian school of painters from the 20th century. So what was really incredible to us was that Simone's art, mainly US comic art, was just next to, the Macchiaioli that we study at school.
Right.
Because of their importance. So that was another thing we wouldn't have expected. When we did the press conference, we did it in a room inside the Museo Fattori. So inside the main museum where we were watching these paintings that we had been looking at on the school books.
Yeah.
So
it's powerful.
It is powerful. That's what, makes you not regret any day that you spend on the phone trying to, make sure that any smallest practical aspect is taken care of. And so it pays you back of everything.
And when when you do the press conference and then you walk through the exhibition, I know you're always, waiting for something to go wrong or something to fix or whatever it is. But, when you're walking through and, you're realizing that these pieces are from all around the world, all different collectors throughout, your brother's career. And you helped, not even help, you got all these pieces there to create something like this. It's got to be like a fulfilling moment to walk through for the first time and see all the pieces and the people. Maybe not on the first walkthrough because you're seeing everyone, but when you see it towards the end, it's got to be something.
I don't fully enjoy that because I'm always looking, to see if the dida are correct, if everything is spelled good. But no, it's satisfying, of course. It's very satisfying. But again, in both exhibitions, I feel like I'm the middle between the art collectors, the museum. So what's more satisfying is the idea that, a lot of young artists come to, comic conventions later and say, I saw Simone's art at the exhibition there. Yep. I went 3 times and I tried to learn some skills. I don't paint myself, but if I painted, it would have been a blessing to see so much published stuff from my brother or from other artists live before it goes back here and there in the world. So, yeah, it's
when I was walking through Livorno, it was a really awesome moment. There was a father and a son walking through, and Simone and I got there with about a half hour left of the day of the exhibition. And, the son was definitely the pushing force to go. You could tell, and Simone and I walked by and I literally watched the son tap his dad and be like, that's Simone Bianchi. And then they ended up talking, and the father said that, his son loves Marvel characters. He loves comic books. He wanted to come to the event. And it was just something very cool. And as you said, like, it's powerful not only to go in and see the paintings and understand them and see the bright colors and the composition, but if you're a young artist, to be able to walk through there and see all the techniques, all the different things, be able to take some notes. It's something that is not just for the event. It sends a message that lasts much longer through it. And I know that's something that you and Simone are very keen on.
And every convention, we don't do many conventions in Italy, but the conventions we do, there's always someone who comes and says, I saw your exhibition. And normally, the memory lasts. It's not possible to compare that kind of memory to just seeing a published work, So that person will have an idea of your work forever. So it's definitely something we believe a lot in. And we would love other artists, other colleagues of Simone to be so interested in. So the more we are, and the most important spaces we can get, because still it's not that easy to get to the most prestigious, museums. But one step after the other, if more artists have the same plan in mind, I think, there are good possibilities that things are going better and better in the next years. So.
Absolutely. And something that Simone has always done too for these exhibitions, which I've loved, as I touched on kind of briefly, is he creates the specialty pieces specifically for those exhibitions. And I remember the one that struck me the most was we're driving into Livorno and he's like, take a look at this statue. This is the statue of the Four Moors. And he explains it to me, and, it's a super strong, powerful statue. And then we go into the exhibition and he has King Namor and the Four Moors. It's basically a Marvelized statue, version of the statue for the exhibition. And the statue is maybe a couple, I don't know, 1 or 2 kilometers away from the exhibition, and you can see the statue, and then you come in the exhibition and you see his take on it. So I always love that, you guys not only bring in works from, throughout his career, but he makes special pieces just for those that you're only going to see there, which I think is really cool.
Because normally when a town decides to host your art, so they give you a prestigious space for sometimes. I mean, it's like, when you bring pastries, when you're invited for lunch. So in Città di Castello, for example, in Città di Castello lived Raffaello. So yep. Simone did the recreation of the famous marriage scene from Raffaello, using especially because that was a very peculiar moment worldwide
in time.
And he also wanted to send a message. So yes, he always does something. Also because you can get the catalog, or you may have seen that art printed on a comic book, but it's something that is seen for the first time live for those who, took their car, went to the museum, and will see something that nobody else has seen so far. So,
yep. And then, that was my main, 2 things I wanted to talk about, because, in the umbrella of being an art rep, it's not just about, buying the paint, getting the 2B pencils, making sure the artist has what they need, or just selling their art on your website or at a convention. It's about making sure, and for you, it's a family business, it's your brother, but it's about making sure that they're well represented on all aspects, that the shipping gets there. And I know you guys, I wanted to give a shout out. You guys have one of the best shipping guys in the history of shipping guys, Gaetano, who handles all of the shipments for, your guys' original art. When you get a package from him, and it's, it's an experience. It's not just in an envelope that's packed in, or, it always arrives safely. And I said, one of the main things that I learned from you was, to treat every client the same, give everybody the same amount of respect, the same amount of time, but also to make sure that they're having a good experience at your booth or at your table. And I think that's one of the things that, me for DiTullio Art Collective, I always wanted to make sure never gets lost, is because when you can go and get a great piece of original art, it's amazing. But if you can have a moment or an experience that connects you with that piece that you're always going to remember, the feeling, like you were saying, the feeling lasts longer than the joy of getting the piece. Every time you look at it, you have something, you have that moment to look back on. And you've always done such an amazing job with that. So it was something that, I tried to learn from you. I've watched you for many years when we were, not only I was on the other side of the table, but when we were working together. And as I said before, when we started, you do have a little bit of an unfair advantage because you can speak 6 different languages and you've worked very hard on that. But I've, French, Italian, German, English, anybody that comes up, you're able to really connect with them. And it's a super special thing. It's something that I've always enjoyed watching and I've always enjoyed experiencing.
No, I think one aspect that is easy to understand for me is that because Simone and I are brothers, I'm not interested in today's job or tomorrow's job, but what I care about is, the perception of his name in the future and how he will be perceived. So if I have to choose between not making a sale today, but leaving a good memories for the future, I of course go for the second, because, this is easily understandable. I'm not here today and I don't know if I'm here tomorrow. I can leave my job, but I will still be Simone's sister. So that is the only thing that can be maybe different from other people. But
And for example, how I can tell you is I know that it's not only affected, multiple clients that you've worked with throughout the years or younger artists that come up and want to speak to you about your brother's work, but, it also impacted me greatly. So I took this off my wall because I wanted to show this because this is a piece that it was the first piece that I ever bought from you. And it was the first piece that I ever picked up in person at New York Comic Con. And I remember the conversation. I remember the moment. And and the piece is something that, I'll never forget. It was something that was truly a memory for me. And I remember the first thing that was asked of me was, wow, are you Matt DiTullio? Yeah, you're so young.
And the second thing was, what part of Italy does your family come from? I'm not sure. And
I'm not really sure. I'd have to double check. You looked at me like, what?
That was unacceptable. And I remember getting your message in the night saying, I double checked.
Well, I was, to be honest with you, I was nervous. Come on, I can't wait to get the piece. I'm in full Comic-Con mode. We're at New York Comic-Con. What was that, 2017 or 2018?
18.
And,
it was the year of the exhibition at Metropolis Gallery of the Marvel Masterpiece.
Correct, with Vincent. And I'm like so happy to pick up this piece. Simone's painting a beautiful Thanos with the gauntlet. I'm like watching that. We're talking and Gloria's like, well, where does your family hail from? And I'm like, I don't know. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. I said, I literally went home, or not, when I went back to my hotel, I called my mom. She got on all the paperwork, figured it out. I messaged at 11 o'clock at night. Gloria, this is where it's from. I had to rectify the situation, immediately. But it's something that is, I don't want to ever get lost in the original art industry because, yes, prices of original art is climbing. And yes, artists need representation. But to me, I've always kind of taken the approach, and I said this on some of my other, segments that I've done. It's like, if you take care of the artist and you take care of the client, normally the business does well. And that was something that I always wanted to be sure was not only that the client got a beautiful piece of art, but they got what they wanted from the experience, whether it's talking to Simone or talking to me or, can you explain to me this technique? If it's for DeMio, how does he get that transition? Well, he uses the sponge. He used to, he looked back at old school Italian artists like Dino Batali and, Sergio Topi, and he found these and made them modernized. So when you can have them connect not only with loving the art, but loving how it was created and when they picked it up. I think it's just something that can't be overlooked because it ties you to that piece of art for a long time.
And then you will see in a few years, because you are still young, but you will see that some very young collectors start collecting small pieces of art. And you will see them in 10 years and they have stopped studying, they have a new job, they buy more important art, but that sketch will remain, the most important piece in their collection. So the fact that you were there and you helped them, picking up the right one will remain for you too as a very, a precious experience too, because we are selling and buying art, which makes it different from other products. Or commercial stuff. Because if a person comes to buy art, it means he or she has a sensibility, and if you are working in this field, you probably share a similar sensibility.
Exactly.
So normally, the experiences at the booth, of course, there are some exceptions or something.
We know there's some exceptions, yes.
But 90% of the times, the experience you have are only positive ones.
Yes.
First of all, because if someone doesn't like the artist you are representing, is not stopping. So
they don't stop at the table.
It means they like the art you're representing. And so, no. What I can say is that during all these years, I've had a huge number of really touching experiences. That I can say for sure. Yes.
Which, it's like I said earlier, it's a fulfilling thing. It feels great. It's something super powerful. But, before we wrap it up, I did want to say, so I'm surrounded by, I have a Simone DiMeo Fantastic Four cover, a Simone Bianchi Wolverine cover, Cal and Goo, Travis Charis, another Simone Bianchi, a Biccialo, but you have some very stunning art behind you. And for those of you that don't know, those are painted by Gloria and Simone's father. He is a phenomenal.
I don't know if you can see them because I was not supposed to show
No,
them.
but to me, me and Simone and Gloria's father, John Paolo, is a phenomenal fantasy painter. And he has his own studio inside the walls of Lucca. And every single time that I am in Italy, Gloria always makes it a point to take me to the studio. And I always walk through, and I love seeing the way that your father's work impacted Simone's work. And I love that you have your father's works hanging up in your house. And I always joke around with your brother that I have paintings from the real Bianchi. I have the original painter Bianchi at my house because I have a couple pieces from your father. But, art's been in your blood for, a long time. And you come from, an amazing, your father was an amazing painter. Simone was an amazing painter. And I'm still waiting for my Gloria Bianchi piece. So I don't know whenever you're going to get working on that, maybe like a nice wrapped canvas mural type of a piece. If I could get, I think something like that, maybe it could be a Gloria, Georgia, and Simone's youngest son. We like a collaboration piece. We could do something like that throughout the years. For Lorenzino.
No, of course, my father's work has impacted Simone so much. First of all, because we both were born in a place where, brushes and colors were
just around.
Daily.
They were around the house.
Even if my father has never painted from home, he always kept the things separated, so home and studio. While Simone has decided to do different things. So house downstairs and studio upstairs.
Yep.
And so Simone was lucky enough to be able to have like an inspiration, but not only an art inspiration, also a master in terms of experience so close. So in terms of, I've used this technique. What do you think? And maybe my father had done the same thing 20 years before that and could say it works, it doesn't work, yes, but. So I think it has helped a lot. Of course, as a person who has absolutely no talent for drawing or painting at all, I can say that being raised in a family with colors and brushes and paintings is not enough. So, Simone was, it was busy. I'm younger than him.
Right.
And so I wasn't there, but it's very well known in our surroundings that Simone's talent was evident right almost from the start, so
I remember your mother telling me that she kept like his very first painting that he did just on like a scrap piece of paper, and she still has it at your guys' home.
No, it's framed in Simone's studio in a corner. There is a square frame, small, amazing. But it was quite evident already. If I compare, to 1-year-old children, if you give him a brush and he does a kind of circle, it's not that common. At least for sure, I don't remember, but if they gave me the same brush, I'm sure the result
just threw it
was different. So. But yeah.
But, Gloria, I just wanted to, end with one thing here. You're always doing such an amazing job representing Simone. You've taught me so much, I appreciate it greatly. And, is there any plans for the future? Are you looking to do any, big exhibitions coming up or any conventions at, maybe a place that you haven't been before? Or is that, what's kind of on the docket, or is we're just seeing as it goes?
So we have a couple of plans that are not confirmed. I'm sorry, my answer is very boring, but
No, it's
between Simone's present schedule until at least the end of 2025 and a couple of answers that must be confirmed, there's nothing sure. So a lot,
Gotcha.
we've learned that a lot arrives really when you don't expect it. And
Of course.
after working with the music business a few times, we also know that projects Simone cares a lot about come all of a sudden and have tight deadlines. So you never know what happens. As of now, we don't have like confirmed exhibitions coming close, in a short time. But we have a couple of ideas that, if they get realized, would be very, very interesting.
Well, wherever the next exhibition is and wherever it is, you know that I'll be there. And
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you again for hopping on and sharing your experience throughout the years and how it's been on the other side of the table and working with your brother. So thank you so much, Gloria. I truly appreciate your time.
I'm sorry if I'm not used to being in the spotlight, so I'm sorry if I wasn't too interesting, but for sure I was honest. So that's my honest experience.
As always. Well, thank you so much, Gloria. And
Thank you,
I'm sure if I have Simone on the show at one point, when he's on the show, I'm sure we'll either see you in the background or you could please come by and say hi. We could always use a little bit of Gloria on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate it.
Thank you again. Ciao.
Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope that our journey from the UK to the US, back to Europe, shed some light, some perspective on what it's like to be an art rep, some of our responsibilities. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I can't wait to be back for Collector's Cash episode 3. Thank you. See you on the next one.